Welcome to today's webinar on what if digital transformation actually worked. I'm Justin Hester, Cognite's VP of Customer Value. My pronouns are they and them, and I am joined today by Dr. Paul Miller from Forrester, Forrester's Vice President and Principal Analyst. And hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Justin. Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad that you're able to spend some time today with the great folks online. And we're going to have a really cool conversation about not just digital transformation, because there's already like 5 billion webinars on that. Just Google it. But we thought instead we'd talk about like, what if that digital transformation actually did a thing, right? And to frame this for the folks watching, we're at a time where I think everyone, if we were honest, would talk about that there's some type of AI fatigue that we have at work, right? And Paul, I know
I thought it
your
was just
research is
me.
showing
I
that.
thought it was just me.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's not just you, it's me too, it's everyone. I mean, my favorite is the other day I got an email from someone, and when you get that email and you're like pretty sure AI wrote it. But what really tells you AI wrote it is I got the little bracket thing that said insert date you want to share here and cracked it. And I was like, yes, this is definitely AI written. But it's not just everyone, it's companies, right? Companies are doing all sorts of Gen AI pilots, from having emails written without anyone reviewing them and sending them to me, all the way to applying AI to their scheduling, to their production lines, to their supply chains, to their shipping lanes, to you name it, right? Everybody's trying an AI thing. And MIT in their 2025 State of AI in Business report said, no, it's not just you, Paul. No, it's not just Justin. It's not just, you're not imagining, dear watcher, that there's AI fatigue. What they found is that 95% of these pilots aren't actually delivering measurable impact to a business, right? That sure, they're nice to have, or maybe they were cool, but they didn't actually deliver anything on that. And so most of you watching probably live in the exact same world that both of us do in our companies as well, where our executives' patience on these things actually doing something is starting to grow really thin, really fast. And Paul, I'm sure you see that with your customers and the businesses that you go speak with, and when you go and do your research, I assume you're seeing the same thing.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And we can quibble with the numbers. Is it 95%? Is it 99%? Is it 92% if we're being really positive? But yeah, broadly, there's been this mad rush. I must do something with AI. I must be seen to be doing something with AI. The boss demands an AI thingamy-bob. Go and build one. We've come through that phase, and now everybody, thankfully, is saying, "Okay, I'm kind of tired of that. I'm kind of bored of that. Show me the value. Show me the money, even, etc. Show me
Yeah.
where and how this helps." And fundamentally, you have to shift from doing a cool AI project towards solving a problem. Reducing downtime on the factory floor, reducing scrap or wastage on a line, reducing failures in a particular pump on a particular plant in a particular part of the world that fails every couple of days. Focusing down on real, tangible business problems that people down on the shop floor would recognize, and saying, how do we solve that? And how we solve that might be better training. It might be going out and buying a better pump because the old one's rubbish. It might be data and analytics and AI, or in most cases, it'll be some combination of the three. And so it's shifting away from AI as the answer to every problem towards how do I best solve a business problem and understand how to insert AI into that to help.
Mm, yeah, exactly. And I like that you brought up that's a mixture of all three, because it's not throwing away the old in the sense of how you do your business, right? Like there's
And if
still
you
the
have pump was rubbish, of
physical.
course, then throw that away.
Well, yes, of course. If if your business already wasn't working well, or the pump was already rubbish, you should probably throw it away. But you can't change that reality. The rubbish pump will still be a rubbish pump. The physical realities of the people who make and power this world remain the same, and you have to integrate all those. I think that's a really important point for people to keep in mind. So as we continue on here, I'd love to give you an opportunity to share some of your latest research. And I know you and your team worked with uh, different industrial customers of Cognite, seeing like, is there a way that data and these things are actually driving impact? And I'd love for you to dive in a little bit there for us.
Yep, happy to. So just a couple of slides before I get into the specifics of the study we did with Cognite, where there are real numbers and real examples and real customers and all the rest of it, which I'm sure everyone is looking forward to seeing. But before that, let's sort of set it in some of the context that we were talking about a moment ago. And as we look at sort of the manufacturing space, and we're defining manufacturing broadly, this is asset intensive industries, not just traditional manufacturers. But as we talk to them around the world, we find sort of four common themes coming up again and again and again. None of them are new. None of them are particularly surprising. What's interesting is that almost every conversation I have now is some combination of all four of these. And so people are talking about integrating digital technologies into their physical products, things like IoT, things like shifting to as-a-service business models instead of selling physical assets, a whole bundle of stuff going on there. There's also a whole bundle of stuff going on around rethinking supply chains. We've seen post-COVID, sort of some of the challenges around supply chains that haven't totally gone away. In recent months, we've seen some of the tensions around the Gulf, for example. We've seen problems with lack of water in the Panama Canal affecting how ships move back and forth between the Pacific and the Atlantic. All these things forcing organizations to think differently and strategically about where and how stuff gets made. We talk as well about reshoring. Pick your favorite politician in almost any country in the world, and they're saying something like, bring jobs home, bring manufacturing home. The reality, which they struggle to admit, is that you can bring the manufacturing home, wherever home is, but you probably don't actually bring many jobs. Because if you're bringing manufacturing from a low-cost location to a high-cost location, you can't afford to employ tens of thousands of people. So you look at automation, you look at robots, you look at various other things to drive those costs down. But a whole bundle of stuff going on there. The third of the sort of four big things, all the sustainability stuff. Electrification, decarbonization, reducing waste, reducing scrap. In some markets, this is a green conversation. It really is genuinely, how do we save the planet? How do we have less waste? It's a good and useful conversation to have. In some markets, it's more about how do we save money. So, it's not about how do I reduce waste to save the planet. It's about how do I reduce waste to lower the effect on my bottom line. But either way, a whole bundle of stuff going on around reducing waste and electrification and the like. And then the fourth big trend is what we call the automation triangle. And this is about balancing three competing forces. One is physical automation, robots, drones, automated production lines, all that stuff. Second one is software automation, so AI, machine learning, robotic process automation, and the like. And then the third piece in that triangle is the human worker, because they're still critically important, they're still there, and they still have to be valued and understood and augmented and all the rest of it. So there's a whole bundle of stuff around understanding how those three forces interact. And this is not going away either. If we jump on to the next
Paul,
slide.
let me pause you actually back
Yep.
there real quick, because I you know, And we've had the opportunity to talk before, and I always enjoy my conversations with you. I come from the manufacturing private and software space, and you're right. All these things have come up at one point or another, right? The words change a little bit, and I love the way you described it with electrification, decarbonization, right? The times change, but the things stayed the same, right? It's I need to reduce scope one emissions. That might be the thing, or it might be that natural gas is incredibly expensive right now. And so I want to find, can I self produce some electricity? It might be I have lots of waste. Can I utilize that waste to generate power to lower my bills? All of these things are on the same thing. And so the times and the seasons change, but the core principles stay the same. But before I let you move on, can you tap in a little? Because you said something that was different, which is you said that now you're starting to hear the companies you speak to talk about all four at the same time. And what do you think is driving that, and or what is the implication of that? Because I think our viewers would agree, like these things, yeah, like yeah, of course we talk about those things, but it is unique that it's all the same conversation now. It used to be that group, this group, that group, that group.
Yes, and I think you partly it's the shifting away from pilots and one-off implementations towards real scale. It's about understanding how this stuff changes my business. How do I interact with customers better? How do I deliver more customized products instead of economies of scale, let's move to economies of scope and not quite lot size of one, but getting there, getting towards smaller batch sizes, getting towards more customized products, and understanding how all of this changes. In manufacturing, it is often a 100-year-old company, 150-year-old company, fundamentally having to rethink its business and how it interacts with people. And to do that, you need to look at all these things together. You need to break down the silos within the organization, but also break down some of the silos between that organization and its partners to really drive sustainable value here.
Awesome. By the way, I always learn something new from you. So today, so far, it was from economies of scale to economies of scope. I love that. I always walk away with nice tidbits.
Stolen from a colleague of mine called George Laurie, who looks at our supply chain coverage. So talk to George.
Perfect. And I'll steal it from you, and the cycle continues.
Oh, yes, good. So this is sort of getting closer to the Cognite piece of the story now. At Forrester, we talk a lot about this concept of a digital industrial platform, recognizing that across a manufacturing organization, there's data sitting in all sorts of little pockets and little buckets and little spreadsheets, little post-it notes stuck to various critical pieces of machinery. That's a problem. Frankly, if that's how your data lives, you're never going to achieve the broader vision I was just talking about on the previous slide. And so we're looking at breaking down some of the barriers between IT and OT. So OT being operational technology, but also breaking down some of the silos between individual sites and head office. Because head office has this vision. We will have a single platform. We will have a single way of doing things. And all the individual sites are going, yeah, right. It's my budget, it's my machine, it's my way of working. I'll pay lip service to the instruction, but I'll then go and just do my own thing. These kind of things are starting to break down. So we have this concept of the digital industrial platform starting to address that. And things like CDF, Cognite Data Fusion, would be one example of that digital industrial platform concept, where you're harmonizing data from different places, common semantic model, a common way of managing and understanding the data, but also then doing other things, becoming a place that other applications and other services can look to for authoritative data. Also a tool for sort of breaking down some of those barriers inside the organization as they solve shared problems with shared data. And fundamentally, the fourth bubble there, the digital industrial platform is a center of gravity. There's this concept of data gravity. As more and more of it is drawn to one place, it sucks other stuff in too. It's like a black hole sucking everything in. But that center of gravity, that place where everything goes, starts to create opportunities for new capabilities and new problems being addressed. And so there's a whole bundle of stuff in that space, which we talk about in the abstract, but what you're about to see is sort of making some of that specific.
So Paul, can you drive a little bit, uh, make this a little bit more real when we talk about this data that's all over the place? It doesn't quite connect. It's on different systems, different places, different modalities, different names for the same thing, right? A notebook is called notebook over here, and a book of notes over here in this system, and black book of note in this system, right? Like, what does that look like? What is the downside to industrial companies that are dealing with that? What negative kind of thing is happening?
It's it's hugely draining and hugely sort of debilitating for these organizations as they start to look at moving above the individual asset, as they start to want to look at a broader view of the entire business and how it relates to things around it. This lack of common understanding simply, in the worst case, actively stops things because you cannot
Sure.
have a shared understanding of the space. You cannot have a shared understanding of the asset. You cannot have a shared understanding of critical messages coming off those machines. So if you are the plant supervisor who understands that particular asset inside and out, fine. You probably don't care. You know what's going on. You know what that noise is. You know whether it's important or not. You know where the product documentation is. For you, down on the plant floor, fine. But as you start to connect out to other assets and other pieces of the puzzle, you need this common view of what's going on. You need an ability to share best practice between sites, an ability to share problems between sites requires common understanding. So common terms for a start, but then common data structures and common data approaches. The worst possible thing would be for your North American plant to be, recording temperatures in Fahrenheit and every other plant on the planet recording them in Celsius. And then you try and unify these things and you've suddenly got a problem. Most of my plants are, 90 degrees. They're okay. This one's 100 and something. Should I be worried? Well, no, you shouldn't because it's different units. Um,
Unless it's Celsius, and then
Unless
you
it's
should
Celsius, then
be
you worry.
vastly worried. Yeah.
Yes.
No, but Paul, I like this because someone once told me that the greatest engineering tool ever made was the Excel spreadsheet. Uh, and and that works, like you said, for the individual in their facility. But you started talking about scaling up and out, and that's where things get, that amazing Excel spreadsheet that everyone knows about that's in your company that has that one calculation or that one data or that one analysis is not live because it's an Excel spreadsheet, so it requires people to work on it. But it's you can't take that spreadsheet and say, okay, apply it to all these other facilities, apply it to this other problem. It just doesn't scale. So sure, it's the greatest tool ever made for this one problem on my monitor and not your monitor.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, then you leave the company and you take your spreadsheet with you. Then what do we do?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's plenty to dig into here. So getting down to the study that Forrester Consulting was commissioned by Cognite to do, this is one of the quotes from one of the people we spoke to. And I imagine everybody attending this webinar kind of recognizes this sentiment. We were unable to make high quality, confident decisions because our data was never in the same operational plane or context. Data was siloed and scattered and hard to pull together. Anyone who doesn't recognize this maybe hasn't been close to an asset recently, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, this is literally what we were talking about, and I didn't even know this was the next slide. We were just naturally talking about this.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the problem we're trying to address. And this is the space we're operating in. So if we jump to the next slide and we'll get started on some of the results from this study. So, as I said, Cognite commissioned my colleagues at Forrester Consulting to do what we call a total economic impact study, looking at a number of real customers who use Cognite and just looking at some of the value they get from that relationship. And there's a whole report with loads and loads and loads of detail and numbers and graphs and all the rest of it. You can scan the QR code to get that report, or I'm sure that the Cognite team in follow-up to this webinar will probably send it to you as well. So various ways to get to the detail and the numbers. I'm not going to talk about all those numbers here today because that would be hard. I'm just going to pull out some of the highlights and flag why you should be interested in digging further.
Of course, we're going to share it, Paul. Why wouldn't we share the great work of your colleagues? You know us all too well.
Indeed, yes. So if we just do the first build on this slide. So this is how we did it. And this is how the Forrester Consulting team always approaches these total economic impact analyses. So in this case, they spoke to stakeholders from 4 existing Cognite customers. They spoke to a European oil and gas firm with 6 offshore sites. They spoke to an energy firm in Asia Pacific with 3 refineries. They spoke to an oil and gas firm in North America with 3 production sites. And they spoke to a chemicals firm in North America with around 50 plants. And in each case, they spoke to a number of key stakeholders and they interviewed them. They asked them a whole load of questions about what their problem was, what their current state was like, why they chose Cognite, how they chose Cognite, and then they began to dig into some of the numbers. Where was the value? How much money did it save? How much time did it save? How much added value did it create in various ways? And all of this is in the report to see. So if we jump on to the next piece. So the TEI specifically is not based on the numbers from these 4 organizations. So it's not European oil and gas firm saw 23% improvement in some metric, therefore that's what the TEI says. The team followed a very strict, very structured process to take the inputs from all of the interviewees, and there was more than one interviewee from each company, so a number of individuals, and pulled them all together to create what they call a composite organization. So an imaginary organization that learns from and builds upon what they got from the interviews. And this composite organization was defined to have $5 billion in annual revenue, around 3,000 employees, and 30 to 50,000 pieces of tagged equipment per site across multiple sites. And this composite organization in the calculations deployed Cognite at 2 sites in the first year, 3 more in year 2, and 5 more in year 3. So they ended up after 3 years, they had Cognite running across 10 sites. And all the numbers that follow are riffing off that.
And I can attest, no matter how hard Cognite wishes to be in these conversations, y'all do this completely independent, and the conversations are both not shared, but also not influenced, right? And I've seen the results. What I like about these reports is, we do really good work with our customers, so we know there's going to be great numbers, but also we y'all see and surface the ugly too, right? It really is real. We see some of the data from your team and we go, this is great, and then we see some data and we got to do better over there, right? So I can personally attest that this is a very rigorous, independent process.
This should be an honest reflection of those 3 organizations and the real value and the real challenges that they're experiencing, because we all learn from that, not just from only telling good news. So if we jump to the next slide, this is sort of the headline figure. This is where the client conversations I have tend to go. It's like when you do an evaluation, like one of our Forrester waves, which are evaluating a set of vendors in a space, everyone jumps straight to who are the leaders, and they don't care about all the other good people who participated. Similar thing with the TEI. People tend to go straight to the headline ROI number, which is this: 465% return on investment. So whatever a company spent on Cognite, they got a 465% return on investment, which effectively means they got their money back in 6 months, which is
Which, Paul, I
woo.
mean, how can they not go to that number right away? Like, come on, that's right.
Yeah. You go straight there. I think that the point that I would always stress is this is good. Dig deeper. You have to dig deeper. You have to look at what's behind it. You have to look at the good that's behind it, and as you said, the areas for improvement behind it. So overall, yeah, good news. Worth this kind of investment for sure. You need to then dig in and look in a little more detail at what's actually going on under the hood.
Well, and you were alluding to this a little earlier in some of what your other research is showing, right? And we've talked about this as well before. You know, even at Cognite, we would say this ROI is not some magic ROI, right? It's not as if that our customers who are seeing these amazing benefits and doing these amazing things, they didn't just turn on the software and it was like, boom,
Yeah.
for nobody's discovered the magic button. If any of us discovered the magic money printing button, if you find it, Paul, you can tell me where it is. I won't tell anyone else. I promise. If I find it, I'll let you know. Don't tell anyone else. To your point, look into the details, but also know that at Cognite, we believe we could do amazing things with our customers, but we also don't think that this magically happens, right? This is also because of the amazing hard work of both my colleagues and our customers who are doing all sorts of great things with the solution, but they're doing it, right? It's not magic. It's not an easy button anywhere.
Yes, it has to, and this is true of competitor solutions as well. You cannot just install them. There is work
Yes.
involved here, and there's long, hard slog, both before Cognite comes in, but also while Cognite is there. Yeah, so
And this is a big thing people need to think about in the AI space, right? Because yes, things are moving faster. I mean, a payback in 6 months in the industrial space is like bananas. Like I'll take that every day. Back when I was a plant manager, if you could give me this ROI and a payback in 6 months, I would sign up on that faster than my pen would move. But there's still time in there. This is the reality of the industrial space. There is physics. There is things, right? Like you have to go do the thing. And this is, I think, fundamentally different in stuff. We talked about what a digital transformation work. This is the part people have to think about, right? Is they have to think about that to get these numbers. We're in the industrial physical space. It's not an email. It's not like you turn on the AI and there's an email, right? Written. This is helping them improve their processes, but and optimize production or things like that. But they still have to do the thing. They have to turn the knob. They have to order the stuff. They have to ship the things. All of that still has to happen. And it's really important for leaders when you go on this journey to think about that, right? That this is not just something on a screen. Even if you have AI agents, which our customers do, right? But they have AI agents running these things, there's still the real world element that has to happen with your team.
yep, absolutely, yes, indeed. So if we jump to the next slide, we'll look at a few more of of the details here. So some of the results coming out for this composite organization. We found in the composite organization that improved access to operational data improved throughput by 1 to 2%, which delivered 10.7 million in incremental profit. Tick, good thing, but very specific, very pointed. This was a benefit from working with the Cognite tool. Jump to the next one. Contextual data, which we've been talking about a lot. Being able to surface this information in a single place, in context, with structure, with semantics, with management, and all the rest of it. Delivering that contextual data at the point of need meant that fewer people had to get on planes and go places. It also meant that people had to spend less time hunting around for information. That on its own saved this composite organization $10.5 million. Again, tick. One more. Data-based insights accelerated root cause analysis by up to 60%. That's pretty good. Minimizing downtime and saving this composite organization $14.5 million. Again, pretty good. And if we jump to the next slide, it shows some of the detail behind what's going on here. So this is the table. There are lots of these tables in the report. This is the table that drove reaching that root cause analysis calculation. And you can see in there some of the numbers being used and some of the calculations being used. And for the model, we assumed around a 60% reduction in root cause analysis time. But actually, from the interviews, they were, a broader spread. And one interviewee said that actually the root cause analysis time was cut by as much as 80% at some sites by using the tool. So we sort of looked at that. Most of the others were around the 60%. We went, nice one for the 80%, but we're not going to inflate the numbers here. We're not going to suggest that everyone can get that. So we sort of pulled it back down closer to where the main body of responses were. But it is worth noting, these are conservative estimates in the model. And it's worth pulling out, this one company, real company, doing real work with real people and real assets, saw as much as an 80% improvement. So there are people doing better than the model suggests as well. So if we jump on to the next slide, this is some of the implications. And again, lots more numbers, lots more detail in the report, and the QR code will be coming up again in a moment. But some of the implications there around making better use of a finite human resource. People are not going away. We're not automating human workers out of existence. Absolutely not. We can't. But we're absolutely looking at using these tools to make the people we've got more informed, more capable of taking action on their own, more capable of taking action faster and better. And in some cases, setting the stage for some autonomous operation where appropriate. So you may find, for example, a lights out shift in a factory. I can't find people to do the night shift. Maybe I can run that autonomously if people are doing the setup beforehand and the tidy up afterwards, and then the day shifts run normally. So lots of opportunity there. Also, lots of opportunity for improving the utilization of very expensive assets. There's lots of numbers in the report around increasing uptime, around that root cause analysis figure that I was talking about a moment ago, around decreasing waste, so that this very expensive lump of kit does what it's meant to do for more of the day. That's a good thing for everybody. So the opportunities there, powered by and enabled by this data and the insights it provides. And then finally, lots of interest as well in being able to compare between sites. I have 100 plants in my organization. How can I see where the good bits are in all of them? There's probably one plant that's the lighthouse that everyone looks to, but even my worst plant, there's probably something it's really good at. How do I surface that learning? How do I surface that knowledge and allow comparison between those sites to make the entire organization perform better, using data, using insights, but also human knowledge and human experience as well. So plenty of that in the report too. And then if we just jump to the final slide of mine, again, it's just that QR code where you can go in and download the full report to understand what's behind some of these headline figures I've been talking about. As I said, lots of numbers, lots of analysis, lots of calculations to show you how the consulting team came up with the conclusions that they did, to be able to present that 465% return on investment. And a break even after just 6 months. So the companies we spoke to saw value from this solution. the composite organization that was based upon those real companies saw value from the solution too. Hopefully, some of you on the call can do the same.
Yeah. Yeah, that we would certainly hope, and I appreciate you sharing that, Paul. So let me, a little selfishly, right, to share, but like, how did we get those customers there, right, at Cognite, and how do we work with other customers who may be, if you're joining us today and you're thinking, I'd love a part of that 400+% pie. I I want to share a couple guiding principles we have when we work with customers, and then we're going to kind of start talking about some of the other secrets we know from our time and all the deep research you have on making these things successful. But one of the things that I heard you talking about was, you multiple times uh, talked about the promise, but then the actuals, right? That they actually have to happen, and go dig into the details. And a lot of the work that we do with customers at Cognite, we found that is kind of that ever growing value doesn't just come from saying the exciting could be, and then oops, it is. It actually that you have to go say, here's the exciting could be, and here's a part of it that I'm going to go work on. And then I need to actually make sure it delivered that back to the business, which is critical. And that's where a lot of these transformation activities go wrong, right? Is that we forget that part. And then we sit there and we go, well, why aren't we able to go to the next place and the next place? Well, it's because you didn't actually go realize the value, right? And once you go realize that value, then you can go find a new place to find the exciting could be, right? And then go attack that problem, realize the value, go find, right? So this is something that at Cognite we believe very strongly in, and we think mixed with the technologies and solutions we provide is where that magic happens, and some of those great results that our customers shared with y'all. And if we go to the next slide here, really want to help folks think this is what at Cognite we believe we help our customers realize the value. And I would suggest just in general in industry, you think about these things, right? Whatever you're doing, whether it's making a decision to work with us at Cognite, which we would love to work with you, or it's making a decision to maybe buy a new widget or to replace that pump that Paul keeps speaking so badly of.
Please replace that pump.
That's hump. It's just, that pump's just trying to get on in life, and Hall just wants it replaced. It is loud though. It really is loud. So, uh, when you're making these, you should be looking at what are the value pillars, what we call value pillars at Cognite, right? Some places might call them value pools. Some places might call them value sectors, right? I've seen all sorts of names, but what are those value pillars that you're going to go and look at and move, right? And so at Cognite, when we work with customers, we help them increase production. We help them reduce the amount and cost of downtime, and we help them increase their industrial workforce capacity. And we also know that other people can do that as well. What we think our secret sauce is, and what we've been able to get things like that 6-month buyback is that we really excel in helping our customers with the time to value, getting that benefit back, and how much they can scale. And so that's our selfish right side of it. But also, I really suggest is what's a takeaway? A takeaway is that you need to do this yourself in industry for whatever activity you're doing, right? So, of course, at Cognite, we'd love to work with you. But whether you're deciding to work with us or someone else or solving something completely different, go find your value pillars. And when you do that, make sure you're thinking about time to value and scale, because I know working with your customers, you've absolutely seen, and I know I lived it back when I was in manufacturing, where really cool pilots kind of get stuck in what's called pilot purgatory, right? This concept that everyone's really happy at what it did, but it never went anywhere. And it's oftentimes because people didn't take into account upfront how quick that ROI was going to be or not be in the negative sense, right? And how they were going to scale and what the time horizon was for the scale. So I really suggest people to think about that. And so
And I think the value pillars are important, and they're also part of how you escape pilot purgatory that you talked about. And the one thing I would stress, and I
yeah,
think you would agree, is someone listening to this call, don't just pick those 3 value pillars that Justin's put up. Find your
Yep.
own. Find the ones
Yes.
that matter to you and your business, not the ones that any vendor or any analyst puts on a slide. Because
Exactly. Don't take
these are
our word for it.
generalized ones, not specific to you and your business and your specific problem that you're trying to solve this year.
Exactly. And you know what, Paul, actually even take that a step further is you're working on this across your organization, right? Let's say just for the sake of conversation that someone selects their own value pillars and they happen to be the ones that we have here, just so we can continue the conversation, right? Even as you go to the different sites, you need to change that language to match that site's language. And I don't mean, French or English or Norwegian or something like that. I mean, use the terminology used in that process in those facilities. So you may be saying we want to reduce the cost of planned downtime, but then at another facility, they might not call it planned downtime. They may call it an outage, a planned outage, right? And you say, well, that's a very simple thing, just whatever, it's the same thing. No, put it in the language that's relevant to the folks that are being impacted. So I would suggest to the folks watching that don't just do what Paul said, which is make it your own against the solution or the challenge you're trying to solve. But then as you think about scale and the people impacted, put it in their language, even though you may have an overarching model that says, okay, as a company, right, we say it's these 3 things. But know that when you go to site A, those 3 things need to be spelled out in a certain way, right? And it
And
needs to matter to folks.
talk about how it helps them, not how it
Yes.
helps head office on the other side of the planet, which no one cares about. How does it help me at site
Yes.
A on the night shift?
Exactly. And the thing is too is and as we're kind of sharing some of the things we've seen that help these transformations be successful, I think oftentimes, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, Paul, from your research and when you get to talk to I get to talk to a lot of cool companies. You get to talk to even more cool companies. We were comparing calendars the other day, and I thought I traveled a lot, and then you somehow outdid me, and I didn't think that was possible. So you get to talk to way cooler people
This is
more than
not a
I
good
do.
thing.
No, no, just for those who know, if you saw our calendars, this is not a good thing for Paul to win. This was not a race that Paul was hoping to win. Um, but what I wanted to hear from you and what are you seeing is that a lot of times people put what's good for the head office in competition with what's good for the folks on the ground. And I have always seen with our customers that the magic actually happens when those 2 goals overlap. Not just the language, but the
Mm.
actual outcomes. And they do overlap quite frequently if you put some effort into thinking about it. But I think all too often these digital initiatives come from the top and they say, hey, we need to increase throughput. And then everyone goes, I think that just means work harder. I don't like that. Or sometimes they come bottom up and it's like, we need to help Johnny on line 3 make more parts, which is good, but that's seen in conflict somehow to increase throughput. So I'm wondering, are you seeing that same thing that the magic happens when you combine those 2 together and they're mutually beneficial instead of what seems to be common, which is mutually exclusive?
Absolutely. And I think it's often not actually mutual exclusivity. It's not that polarizing. What we often see is just a lack of attention to what it means for Johnny. You said on the plant floor. Um, you have a directive from head office that requires maybe some more data to be captured, or you have a directive that says we're going to use a new tool. For Johnny on the plant floor, at that level, it's just more work. I just have to record more information. I have to use a different unfamiliar tool without actually saying this is how it helps you, and understanding, perhaps, this yes, it's a new tool, but it means you no longer have to type in 27-digit serial numbers every time you maintain an asset because you just take a photograph of the barcode. That's a good thing. I'll have some of that. Or It will capture voice notes as you do your rounds instead of you having to sit in the break room at the end of your shift writing down what you did. All of these things are about achieving the objective from head office, but delivering some recognizable value to the people who are actually having to do the work as well. And sometimes they'll have to do more work. Yes, they will. But if it's couched in a way that says there are benefits for you too in that new work, in that different work, which make other parts of your job perhaps safer,
Yeah.
or perhaps mean you will have fewer cases of unplanned downtime. So there will be fewer alarm calls at 3 o'clock in the morning when you were in your bed.
Yeah.
These kinds of things play into driving the value proposition, so it's a win-win for the organization, but also for the organization's employees.
No, I mean, it's exactly that, right? I mean, we're working with a major utility operator in Europe, and that's one of the things they talk about, right? Of course, to them at their facilities, uptime is absolutely critical, right? There cannot be downtime. So when there is an unplanned event, they have to work on it. And they tell us immediately, right? They tell us this story of how folks used to get the call, right, in the middle of the night, which is never good when the phone rings at 2 a.m. and you're a plant manager or a lead a maintenance engineer. That's not the phone call you are. And then they would have to drive, because where this facility is, they'd have to drive an hour into the facility, then understand what the heck was going on, then start solving it, then solve it, then drive all the way home, get in bed, and then the alarm go off an hour later to go into actual regular shift, right? And they talk about how they've been able to save multiple trips because they didn't have to go in and see what was going on and just to find out, to be like, hey George, just flip this switch or turn this knob and okay, we're good to go again. They could see that, right? So not only was that individual able to get back in bed quicker, but it was beneficial to the operator as well, because that downtime was shortened, because just the 1 hour car drive alone was removed, right? And that was an hour back to the operations. So, it's taking that into account and then being thoughtful and mindful about it, right? And understanding and empathetic. I love, I'm really into that term right now, is being empathetic to the people doing the job, right? And
Particularly when we
so
start
much
talking about
value.
particularly when we start talking about things like automation. If you go into any plant on the planet and shout automation over the tannoy, most of the people who heard you probably thought you just said, "You're all fired."
Yes.
And actually, that's
Yes.
not true. It's about, most manufacturers, most asset intensive industries can't hire enough people. They
Correct.
need more. And so it's about using these technologies to augment the people they have, not to replace them.
Yeah, we really like to think about, there's a very in vogue term right now with AI, and it's human in the loop. And at Cognite, we like to switch that a little and say, no, with industrial AI, you shouldn't be trying to do human in the loop. You should be trying to do human in the lead, because you should be using these technologies to push your people who are the best at what they do. That's why you hired them. That's why they work at your facilities, right? That's why they do what they do. You should be using these tools to push them even further in the lead, not to put them in the loop or to add another cog to the machine. No, no, no. Use these and push them forward, empower them, make their lives better, make them more effective at what they do. Everybody wants to do that, right? We always want to go to work and it be cooler, better, faster, stronger. We'd love to do that. So, the magic webinar Puppet Master in the Sky is telling me that our time is coming to an end here. And Paul, always, anytime I get to spend time with you, it goes so fast. And so I certainly appreciate it. I would be remiss if I didn't share, especially heading up our customer value here at Cognite, that at Cognite, this is not something that we just pay lip service to. In fact, we have something we call our moonshot, which is by 2035, we want to have worked with our customers to measure 100 billion in realized, measurable, actualized value, right? Not the promise of what could be, but the promise that it was, right? And so, we truly live that, ingrain that every day, right? And from our engineering groups to our teams in the field to our consultants to heck even our marketing teams who put together the wonderful slide, right? Even they're thinking, what are they doing that drives customer value? And we love that, and we think that's something that really can make us a good partner. But again, I would challenge that even if we don't get the opportunity to work with you, how can you take this mentality inside your industrial organization into your digital transformation activities and take that same ethos, right? It's not about the promise of what could be. It's not about the promise of what's cool. It's not about the promise of a lighthouse or checking a box. As you said at the beginning, right, Paul, oh, you got to do some kind of AI widget. No, it's about the promise of what was and will be, right? And focus on those things. And of course, at Cognite, we would love to have the opportunity to do that with the folks watching. But even if we don't get that opportunity, take that ethos, right, and bring it into your digital transformation efforts. As we wrap up here, Paul, any last words for our friends watching? Last thoughts you want them to remember?
Uh, think about the worker. Absolutely, critically important. Keep the person who will actually do this job in mind, and download that TEI report and take a look at some of the numbers behind it. Think about how and where and why it applies to you and your organization. And as Justin said, learn some of those lessons, whatever tool you're using, but also look at the way in which the specific tool plays into the numbers as well.
Well, I really appreciate your time today, Paul. You are a very, very busy person, and I always appreciate that I get to steal some of your busy and very valuable time and learn from you. It's you're one of the people that maybe this is the best way to describe. Every time I get to talk to you, even if it's in a forum like this, I have a page of notes. And I even knew what we were going to talk about. And I still have a page of notes that I learned from you.
You were just writing down things I stole from George Laurie. So
Exactly, but I'm gonna credit them to you, and then someone will steal them from me and credit them for me, but no, I really appreciate it. I really do. I always learn something from you. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the time of the viewers. I know all of y'all are busy, and to spend some time with two folks online talking about digital transformation in the industry, I appreciate you taking that time. So, Paul, to you and to the viewers online, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
indeed, you too. Thank you all for your time.